What is going on, investors? Happy Friday. Hopefully you guys have had a great week, eventful week in the stock market. Quite frankly, one of the most eventful weeks and news-driven weeks that I've seen in the stock market in quite some time. Obviously, taking a lot of the headlines are this stock market plunge accelerating this week, and some believe it's due to kind of the GameStop and the Wall Street bet euphoria that has driven up the value of some of those stocks, consequently forcing big money managers who were short those names to possibly and potentially liquidate a lot of other profitable positions. Although there's no evidence of this yet, it is likely that some hedge funds had to unload profitable positions, particularly maybe in a lot of these FAANG names, Apple, Facebook, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, and Tesla, because they were just getting hammered by GameStop and all the other stocks that have been soaring. In my opinion, if that is the case, that creates a wonderful buying opportunity, because that is not a fundamental reason why these stocks are going down. It's not even a technical reason why these stocks are going down. That just is a fear and greed-driven price action, and in my opinion, could create some buying opportunities for the stock. When we jump over the stock chart of all these stocks, we'll see where they're at. Now, let's run down a little bit of the news. Facebook reported earnings this week. All the videos are on our channel of all these companies that reported. I won't go in depth on their financials and things like that because, look, I already have posted a 5 to 10 minute video on all these companies. Again, links to those in the description below. So Facebook started the week right about 280, drifted down, okay? Their earnings report was good, but they reported that they were going to have accelerating costs next year, and it's probably a question mark whether or not the user growth, particularly here in the United States and Canada, will accelerate as well. Now, the news that we didn't include on our video was Facebook is preparing a broad legal attack on Apple, and so Apple is releasing kind of a new version of iOS that makes it harder for companies like Facebook and probably even Google to monetize people that are surfing around the web. And so Facebook is going to go on attack to Apple. At least that is the rumor. So we'll have a little bit of FAANG on FAANG legal action here, likely. I think this would be really interesting, and I think this could have massive implications for both these companies. Stay tuned on that one. Moving over to Apple. Apple started the week higher at 144. Initially, after reporting earnings, it just kind of stayed flat, but Apple has been selling off, and in my opinion, could create a buying opportunity in the coming week, next week with Apple. Probably not quite yet. When we jump over the stock chart with Apple, we'll talk about that. But they reported earnings. Everything looked good. They got upgrades across the board. Everything looks solid with Apple. I just think over the last month, the stock has performed rather well, and I think it pulled forward a lot of the gains, and then you have some profit taking, which I believe could be attributed to the GameStop kind of soaring and hedge fund managers having to sell winners to kind of bring in some liquidity into their portfolio. Apple would certainly be one of those stocks that they might potentially have to sell, and that could create a buying opportunity. When we get over the stock chart, we'll talk more about that. Now, Amazon has not reported earnings. They report earnings, I believe off the top of my head, February 2nd. So that is next week. They started the week at 3,359, ended the week at 3,200. We'll just talk about them from a chart perspective here in a minute, but they are still in a range. We'll see what happens with Amazon's earnings will be key. We'll see if that is enough to pop the stock. Now, Netflix did report earnings, and they were strong, but the stock started at 567 and has kind of melted down to 532. You know the story with Netflix. If you follow this video story, when I click over to the Netflix chart, you should know exactly what has happened with this stock. It has been extraordinarily predictable over the last coming weeks and months, and it did exactly what it has done. And so we'll talk about that. It also could create a buying opportunity for Netflix. Moving on to Google. Now, Google's been probably the most resilient stock of this bunch outside of maybe Microsoft and Tesla as well. But certainly of the FAANG names, Google is performing beautifully. So $1,900, $1,919. We started the week, ended the week, slid down a little bit to $1,827. We'll talk technically on the stock here in a minute, but QVC launches here on YouTube to bring 8 million live TV service. Now, I saw this the other day that in China, or it was Japan, one of those countries where the same kind of thing happens on some of those platforms. Like you have, and it's not like QVC professional outlets like QVC. It's just regular people, maybe like me, starting a channel and like selling on there. So I actually think that's kind of I wouldn't say the future, but I think lots of QVC like things will probably launch here on YouTube and kind of have either consistent or maybe even around the clock type programming that's meant to kind of sell you stuff. And so I think that might be kind of interesting trend to follow. Obviously, YouTube will benefit from the type of ads and maybe potentially even collecting some kind of commission off that. Now, again, here on the channel, I think we're in an era of regulation on big tech. Where it comes from, who it comes from, is probably up in the air, and it'll take some time for it all to materialize. But the EU's got its act together, and they are coming after Google's ad system. So it appears that they're going to do a lot more investigation and see what happens. But again, expect a news headline basically weekly affecting Google, probably Apple and Facebook as well. Microsoft could skirt by a little bit. Netflix, no problem. Amazon, maybe a little bit, but it is something to be aware of. Now, Microsoft also reported earnings this week, had a nice pop, and it kind of ended the week about flat though. 228 went up to about 240 something and sold off to about 231. But all in all, very, very nice week for Microsoft. It got a range of upgrades. Webbush went from 270 to 285. Jeffries went from 260 up to 300. $300 is like $70 more than where it is. BMO is at 270. So there's just a lot of upside. People are predicting. They referred to their earnings as Picasso-like. I don't exactly know what that means, but they are doing, if you watch the Microsoft video that we posted earlier this week, it's just a phenomenal company, and they are producing things very nicely. Now, Tesla, start of the week, 863, just slid sideways, okay, even after reporting earnings. Again, this is probably another one of those cases where you look over the last month, the stock is up 25%. So the fact that it slid a little bit this week, not that big of a deal. Pulled forward a lot of earnings. I mean, if you want to stretch this out to a whole year, the stock's up 636%. So a little bit of a pullback, in my opinion, is actually good, especially if you want more exposure to Tesla. I actually think shaking out some of the weak hands or the people that are trying to trade this could develop a buying opportunity in Tesla. We'll talk more about that when we go over the stock chart. Now, the big news for Tesla wasn't related to them directly, but GM's electric car push sets off sparks across the electric vehicle sector. I don't know, that's probably a little sensational headline, but here's the deal. So GM is moving full speed ahead to bring 30 EV models to the market by 2025. I think the other headline that's not in here, I think they fully expect to go 100% EV by 2035, which is like, 14 years from now? 14 years is a long time. So I wouldn't expect this to happen overnight, although GM's share price has appreciated quite nicely, okay? I was in this thing for like $30 for the longest time, and now it's over 50. So it's actually been kind of nice. Now, they have battery technology that they believe will give them 400-mile range on a single charge, and that would beat Tesla's range on their Model 3, although I would expect Tesla to catch up if GM is able to do the same. Final news with Tesla, we mentioned that they reported their earnings. I'll have a link to that video in the description below. But they produce in line with the vehicles. They delivered in line with the vehicle. Their margin with the vehicles was basically in line. I think investors with Tesla are just waiting. What's next? Can you actually deliver the Semi like they announced this year? What other things are coming down the pipe with Tesla? Because now we don't have like a major Model 3 or Model Y coming. You know, the Semi will be kind of a niche product. The truck, the Cybertruck that they have planned, again, more of kind of a niche product. We'll see if Tesla is able to shake things up in the coming weeks and months and year ahead to really drive more investor demand in the share. Not that it necessarily needs it. Now, moving over to the stock charts, Facebook made a beautiful rally. I mean, this thing popped. We're on a daily chart, and just in a couple days, the stock went from 247 all the way up to 285. But we see this 285 level has just been a lid on the stock, okay? It bumped its head here, peaked up, bumped its head here, bumped its head again. Man, this 285 level is a critical level with Facebook. Now, if you want to kind of trade this one, it's actually pulled into a zone where I don't mind it. In fact, we're at the bottom end of our zone. This is where I tend to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, I'm a little overweight Facebook, quite frankly. I probably have 30 shares of Facebook, so I'm probably a little overweight of it already. So whether or not I add to this level, I am not 100% sure if I will or not. We'll see in the coming weeks if that is something I decide to do. But 247 up to 259, guys, this is not a bad area. You've seen every time we've flown into the zone over the this is since August of last year. So you're looking at 5 months of price action here. This stock has rebounded here, but keep in mind, every time it's gone up to 285, it's bounced its head there. So we're basically range bound. It's a it's a solid $40 range. So if you want to swing trade this one, could potentially, that's probably what I would do with Facebook, is actually swing trade it, since I've already got a fairly long position in it. Now, Apple did something very, very interesting. So we see here, these were the all-time highs with Apple, kind of like pre-split. Then the stock really sold off, and it's kind of channeled out a little bit. We can actually probably add another line down here. I add these lines down here, and people think, oh no, the stock will never get down there. Well, look, a couple months ago it was there. So it's highly actually probable that it could retest these lows at some point. So what happened was we made a high here, sold off, never got back to it, but then we got back to it here, got rejected a little bit, and then we popped above it and got rejected. And now we're coming back down here. First level is 128. So 128 is a critical level with Apple. Okay, if we break this 128 level, you've got a couple stops down here at 125 and then further down at 119. Personally, I would look in this area just because, again, from my perspective, I'm probably in Apple at a price, I'm probably in this stock for like 40 or 50 bucks, maybe even less than that. So I have plenty of shares, several thousands of dollars worth. So I'd be looking more at 112 to 119 would be, I'd want to get this stock somewhere down in here. I'd want a nice reversal in this one. Now, it certainly could happen. Look, we were down at 119 in November, okay, almost right in the beginning of December. So it's possible that this stock reverses, okay? Now, it could stop here at 128. We could get a hard stop just like we did here, and this stock resumes an uptrend. What it does, I don't know, but it's actually it's doing just fine. I mean, it's right here, right on an area, and so I'll be carefully monitoring this one next week. Could be a swing trade for me. If it dips way low, I add to a long position, but it could be a swing trade opportunity with Apple. Moving on to Amazon. We talked about how Amazon has not reported, so we actually see less price action with Amazon. It's just channeled. I mean, this is back to November. This stock has been between 3,100 and essentially we'll call that 3,300 for about almost 4 months now. This stock has just not been able to break above, and now it's peaked its head up above this level, but it has not been able to forcibly get above and retest these all-time highs. Will it be able to do that next week? That's what we're kind of looking for with Amazon. Any breakdown, let's say it reacts like Apple did or like Facebook did, you could have buying opportunities with Amazon. I would look for it in this range here, and that is, we'll call that 2,900. Obviously, that's the low end of the range. Anytime I shout out a number, it's typically the bottom end of the range. You could come up to 2,950, could come up to 3,000 if you want, okay? But I would look for this stock down in here. I'm way overweight Amazon. I would look to add this probably in my son's portfolio where I can buy fraction shares of that one. Now, Netflix has been extraordinarily predictable as well. Every time this stock has popped its head above this 510 level, 515, it has kind of danced around there for a second and then I wouldn't say crash, but basically corrected all the way back down. We saw the same thing. We had big pop on earnings way up here, actually created a new high. This is actually pretty bullish. The fact that it's retraced is actually, in my opinion, probably creating a buying opportunity with Netflix. Now, there's an intermediate zone here that's kind of created with this price action. Here's our price right now, right here. I'd like to see this pull back to this 50-day moving average, which is $5.15, only about $15 where the stock is. Anything below that, I'm probably a buyer of Netflix. I don't have any direct exposure to Netflix, so I'd like to pick up a share or two, in my opinion, and you could see that next week if we get more broader market sell-off. Now, Google is acting extraordinarily strong, and it actually did the opposite of what Apple did. It kind of peaked above its highs, and it has held this level. Okay, now it's at a critical level. It is literally sitting right on our line right now at 1825. Okay, Google is sitting right here. A break below 1825, and this stock is more than likely coming down to 1780 and potentially lower than that to about 1725. So Google's in that range where I wouldn't want to buy this. I don't necessarily want to buy this unless you have a strong conviction that it's going to bounce here and then pop up to these highs. I don't think your risk reward's not super high there with Google, but it's performing great. If you're long Google, just keep holding it. If we do get a pullback into the 1725 level, my opinion, that creates a buying opportunity. We have a nice channel of price action here that should create some support. If it doesn't, we do have some gaps here. It should come back down here and fill this gap. These are even better areas to acquire this stock if you want to. Microsoft is looking almost identical to Google. You see here, we popped up over our all-time highs, and now we're sitting right at the previous all-time high. So here's the previous all-time right here, and we're sitting almost dead on it from a price action. So we're at 231. Microsoft is exactly like Google. A break below this 230 level will likely send us lower. I would say more than likely down to the 225 range. Anything lower than that, we have this gigantic amount of sideways consolidation here. I'd want to buy this stock anywhere from 210 up to 225, in my opinion, could create a buying opportunity for Microsoft. Now, the other case of the scenario is we hover here for a second and then we resume our uptrend, which is rather steep. I think you could sideways consolidate up here as well. But what I'm looking for is this to break this level and come down here to lower levels, create a buying opportunity. Finally, a Tesla. Now, Tesla's chart, we sideways consolidated up here for just a second, and we kind of broke what I would consider kind of a level here, but it's now sitting on the bottom of that one. So we're sitting right here at 795. So two things can happen with Tesla. So we could continue to channel in this box from call it 780 up to close to $900 per share. Could channel sideways. A break below that, there's not a lot of demand for the shares right here. I mean, we've got just a scattered group of candles. I think this one could come down to I think this one could come down to the 650, 660. Any pullback into this channel right here probably creates a buying opportunity for Tesla. I know that's some of you guys out there that are long Tesla and are, kind of, I wouldn't say beginners, but somewhat new to the stock market are going to say, oh, there's no way the stock could pull back to this level. Well, look, it was back here like in December, which is like last month. So a pullback to this area is very probable, especially if this downward momentum that we've created over the last couple of days continues. I think if the GameStop kind of keeps in the news cycle and forces these hedge funds to liquidate and build capital, stocks like Tesla that have ran tremendously, Apple, Facebook, all these stocks are sellable for these big institutions because they've got to lock in some gains and lock up some profits and lock up some money so they don't basically go belly up and lose a bunch of customers. So basically, they got to stay in business, and one way they could do that is by selling these stocks. And in my opinion, that creates an amazing, probably a once a year, once every 2 years type buying opportunity. That is personally what I am hoping for. I know a lot of you guys watch this. You might be kind of new to the market. You want the stocks to just go up every single day. I am a pullback investor. I hope for these deep pullbacks, especially not related to really anything other than fear and greed. okay? That's what drives the stock market, and we're seeing exceptional amounts of fear and greed right now, especially in names like GameStop. And when you see exceptional amounts of fear and greed, it often creates extreme buying opportunities because the fearful are going to have to sell these names right here, and I want to continue to buy these names, and I'd love to get them at a discount. So hopefully that materializes over the next week. Let me know in the comments down below what you think is going to happen. We'll be back again very soon and again next week with our Friday show. Hopefully you guys had a great week. Good luck with your investments.